Welcome everybody to Temple of Limitless Light. Please follow us. If I get 1,000, I can start selling t-shirts. This is the second part of our talk on the hero's journey. There's a document that summarizes the entirety of the hero's journey on our Facebook site, which I'll link in the text below. Honestly, having this as a summation of Joseph Campbell is amazing. This was written by Frater Barabbas. It's in his book, Mastering the Art of Ritual Magic, which my understanding is there's going to be a second printing. And of course, the hero cycle comes from the amazing Joseph Campbell, Hero with 1,000 Faces. You can watch him on YouTube, and you should, because it's amazing. Joseph Campbell, the interviews with Bill Moyers. If you just search under YouTube for Joseph Campbell, it's all there, and it's an absolute treasure. If you haven't listened to it, then you are denying yourself something wonderful. So let me show you where we've been so far. So here is the hero cycle, the monomyth, which is Joseph Campbell looking at world mythology and how there's really only one big story that's repeated and rearranged over and over and over again. So what we've talked about in the first part was the call to adventure, the last judgment, refusal to call, the fool, the high priestess, this whole journey where our hero, which is you, because this is your story, is called to do something out of their normal way of doing things, outside of their normal way of living their life. Something has changed. And so you're called to adventure. You struggle with it a little bit. You get some guide, you cross the threshold, and you go into the other world. You go outside our normal way of doing things. And you go on the road of trials, and you reestablish who you are. You reestablish your own efficacy, your own ideas of who you are. You redefine yourself, because that is the first part of the story. So when we are watching a story, we're reading a book, our hero is called to adventure, and they go to the port, they go outside the city, they go and they meet with some strange people, and then they go have these adventures, they go to the underworld, and then they strip away who they used to be and they become a new person, and they gain the power. They become the Jedi, they become the magician, they become a samurai, a ninja, or whatever. They go through this process. That's what we've talked about so far. And a lot of times in stories, that's all you get, because they don't really have that much time. And that's kind of like the really exciting part of a story, right? Where the person like, oh, you have a great destiny. No, I don't have time for that. And then they go through all these adventures, and they realize that they have this great inner power. That's only the first part of the story. So what Joseph Campbell talks about is this whole cycle has 4 parts. First is the departure, a separation or the departure, and then there's the trials and victories of initiation, the initiation process. But once you're initiated, once you're the ninja, the wizard, the Jedi, the whatever, then what? You get the next part, which is called the Cosmogenic Cycle. Cosmogony is origins of the universe, origins of reality. And so the boon that the person gets, at first they think it's becoming the Jedi, but the real boon is discovering their place in the universe and time and space, and how that affects the destiny of reality. They get the big picture. So where we last left off, the last phase is self as exalted being. Oh, the ultimate boon. Apotheosis is the second part. The ultimate boon is secret knowledge of the soul, the chariot. Last we left off is the chariot. The chariot lets the person move freely throughout reality. So then they get the vision, the cosmogony, which is the origins and destiny of the universe itself. And just to reiterate, we're using Joseph Campbell as a way to understand the major arcana so that we can understand both our own adventures and our own cycles of initiation, but also understand the major arcana a little bit better because it's a little bit obscure in its origins in Kabbalah, which is a little difficult. I think a lot of people have difficulty relating it to it. But Joseph Campbell is amazing, and it's very easy to get into. Okay. So that's where we've been. So the cosmogonic cycle begins with the world navel, the universe card. So this is representing the central origin of all things, the axis mundi, the cosmic background, everything emerges from. This is like the clear light where all thoughts and emanations in the universe, everything comes out of. The ever-present source, which everything emerges out of. So this is the great chaos that exists before creation. So when this card comes up, it's representing a point of stillness. The source is eternal, doesn't go anywhere. So this represents the eternal potential to do anything in a reading. So if you see this card come up, it's like you're at a still point. You can go into creation. There's a sense of achievement. It's like when you hit a new plateau. So the first part of that vision is a vision of the source, the eternal background, the clear light, which everything emanates from. Then we have emanations, right? The chaos, the background radiation, a force of energy radiates outward to create this reality, which is represented by the star. From the background of eternal night, the domain of the eternal source, emerges the first principle of creation. In a sense, this is like masculine energy of creation. This is the energy that shoots out of the void. The first principle is light of the logos. It's the intelligible, the will to act and create. The first principle is not eternal, right? Because there's a beginning and an end. Each cycle of creation has a beginning, a middle, and an end. It arises, flutters around for a while, and then goes away. It's like everything else. First emanation is represented by the passage of individual consciousness out of the collective unconscious source, the differentiation of an individual from the collective. So we have a background source that's eternal and unchanging, and then an emanation from the void. So when the star shows up in a reading, it represents an act of creation, an act of energy bursting into your life, the benevolence of the universe, like leaning into you and helping you. So we have a source, an impulse of energy. We need something to absorb that energy and form creation. These are the same as the first three supernulls of the supernals of the Kabbalah. That's not surprising. It's very hard to represent creation to a human mind in any other way, which is kind of what this is all about. It's this really sort of a general understanding of how things create based on the human experience. So this becomes, the next stage is the Empress. And I'm using the BOTA, Builders of the TDM cards. You can buy them and paint them yourself. It's a lot of fun. You should do that. The Virgin Birth, creative roles of women in the mythical golden age. So the source, the emanation, and then the capturing of that energy to create paradise, right? The story we've all heard, the mythical golden age, or perhaps it was a golden age. This is the time of the goddess ruling over everything. There's a goddess consciousness. We're worshiping woman as the giver of life. And this is the time in Eden. This is the time of paradise. The time when people lived eternally. Counterpoint is there's not a lot of change. Things tend to be very static. There's just things that, like a chessboard, the pieces rearrange, but the game doesn't really change. When the Empress comes up, she represents a time of benevolence, of abundance, maybe children. So one of the things that comes up a lot because there's a lot of fertility in this card, but she represents that great mother goddess who takes the energy of the star and creates a creation. And this creation becomes the pattern for everything that follows. So we have a creation, but it's static, perfection. So what happens next in the story of creation? Perfection is shattered somehow, right? Something happens and that paradise cracks and becomes imperfect and introduces change, which is the death card. This represents the age of when we're in now, when there is change, life passes in and out of matter, but there is change in technology, there's change in society, there's change, we move forward. Before the spirit comes out of the source of creation and into matter, when it's in the golden age, it can't really evolve so much. When it gets into the age of death, evolution becomes a lot more possible. And in fact, it becomes imperative. Once you are experiencing limitation of life, then there's a real impetus to evolve and get out of it for the spirit that's incarnated to make its way back to source. The life force, manifests as an organic being that degrades and dies over time. And a lot of stories, there's all kinds of reasons why the mythical golden age ends. Maybe I shouldn't say mythical. The golden age ends. The idea of eating the apple, where we gain a separation from nature, or the apple represents knowing the difference between good and evil, making choices, a perception of duality. It's a lot of duality comes into this. What usually cracks the paradise is humanity's perception of duality in some way. Sometimes it's also something Promethean, where human beings are given fire or something like that. We're given some sort of ability to modify their environment in which ways are dangerous, but it usually has something to do with a dualism that comes into our perception. We're choosing outcomes. We're making predictions. We're trying to change the future. If this is good, that's bad. I don't want this, I want that. I want this, I don't want that. And so when we go from the mindset of the great goddess to being able to control our outcomes and evolve, that shatters the garden. Whether or not we were supposed to be in there or not, or whether expected to escape, it's all part of the story. So when the death card comes up, it's representing the evolution and your need to evolve, and that you are going to evolve. You're going to have to. You don't really have that much of a choice. Ultimately, you will evolve to some degree. You can either accept it and move face first into the evolution and benefit from it and the enlightenment and the gains from it and the insights, or you can resist it and increase your suffering. Sorry, but that's the death card, evolution, which leads to disillusions. The world eventually ends. So we have a source that's eternal, that's floating out there, an emanation from the void, where God has captured that energy and creates a paradise. We escape that paradise because we want to grow and go back to the source. And eventually that universe is devolved and pulled back into the source of the eternal source that's always there. The hangman represents that point of dissolution, and the creation dissolves and goes back into the source. Spirit has descended into matter, gained the insight, learned and grown and evolved, and now needs to bring that back to the source, because that's what the source created a creation for to begin with, is to experience that creation and gain some wisdom, some kind of enlightenment that it brings back to itself before repeating the cycle once over again. So the hangman represents, in a sense, like the end of a cycle, going back to source, but also a time of rest, of consideration, of digesting everything that you just went through, taking it in. So you can, when I see this come up in a reading, I kind of feel like, well, I interpret this as a period of digesting, because spiritual progress goes through a period of, there's some kind of advancement, there's some difficulty, a realization, and then a period where you digest and apply those spiritual insights. So this is the Cosmogenic Cycle in the Major Arcana, representing the creation of the universe. This is the insight that the hero, which is you, gains from going through the process, understanding of the cycle of time and cycle of the universe. Not every story has this exactly the same, but this is basically the idea. The source, the emanation from the void, the creation of golden age. We can't stand being in the golden age because it's just not interesting enough. So we break it, we shatter it somehow because we want to evolve and grow. When we go through these experiences, then the energy goes back to the source. So that is the third stage, Cosmogonic Cycle. So our hero is broken out of their normal thing. They've gone to the underworld. They've gone through the trials and tribulations. They've achieved some level of self-mastery. They get this great vision of how the universe is put together. They've got to come back now to a degree. So the next phase is the return and reintegration with society. This is section part 4 in the document that I'm reading from. So you've achieved some level of enlightenment. You've achieved this vision. Maybe you're a junior bodhisattva because it's never ending, really. Some stories, that's enough. For some traditions and cultures to achieve a level of enlightenment, you're good. You're living with the gods, that's fine. So just like in the first cycle, we had a refusal of the call, another refusal of the call. You're good. You're floating with the gods. You're having a vision. It's amazing. You're up there. You don't necessarily feel like you have to come back. But for a magician, for most of us, for even a shaman, having achieved this vision, this visionary experience, we want to bring it back and apply it to our lives and share it with other people. If you can't really be enlightened without being a bodhisattva. You can't be a private Buddha. You've got to bring the wisdom back for all sentient beings so that everyone can benefit from this experience. So the justice card, sure. I mean, it can represent a lot of ideas of justice and fairness, of karma working its way out, maybe getting to the end of a karmic cycle and staying in that space. There's also a Kabbalistic thing where it's Lamed, it's the ox goad that works with the energy of the fool. You see, the fool was refusal of the call, refusal to go on an adventure. Lamed is wanting to stay in the afterlife. That's sort of connection there. The fool on a higher level, refusing to come back. But so the justice card can also be kind of a get off your high horse and be a little more practical about things. That can be the advice of the justice card too. So you got to come back. But just as when the hero left their normal society and way of doing things, they had to face a fierce guardian. Come back to the world from the world of spirit, you have to face another fierce guardian. This is called the magic flight, crossing of the threshold. The tarot card is, of course, the moon. This is a wonderful card because it represents this aspect of coming back and separating truth from falsehood. When you come back, there's a lot of illusions that you have to go through, a lot of crap that you have picked up from your karma that's been unresolved, from your family history. You have your personal shadow, which you have to deal with in this, right? If you haven't really looked at those things. And then there's your family shadow that you picked up from your family of origin. Whoever raised you is going to give you some shadow, right? Because of what they don't want to look at, what they don't want to deal with. And then your cultural shadow, things that you don't want to talk about, that you picked up from them, like you don't say cancer, things like that. And so when you come back, you've got all this sludge that you've got to push off, right? Separate truth from falsehood and hold on to the boon, the vision that you gained, and not have it be colored by all the shadow and everything of your own stuff that you still have unresolved. Because just because you made it to the afterlife and come back and have these visions doesn't mean that you're completely done. So the moon, the magic flight, separating truth from falsehood. Crowley talks about ancestral loathing. It's like so awesome. Okay. So we had the call, the refusal. We're facing an obstacle. We need help from without. We need somebody to help us come back and reintegrate after we've had this crazy vision. We want to come back to the world, but we're not the same person. We've got to fit back into society. And so you need assistance. Rescue from without, the healing of the Fisher King, which is the Emperor. You see that? The Emperor card. Very often, the journeying person needs somebody to help them come out of their vision, to call their name, to say a magic word, to ground them, to assist them to put their soul back into their body, because their body has been in a state of trance, a state of dreamless sleep, while their soul has gone off and done other things. Or maybe they've gone to battle something and they need to come back to society. They need to be cleansed. They need to be reintegrated. They need a ceremony or something to pull them back into society. And the Fisher King story, being healed from without. When somebody brings the grail to you and says, let me heal you up, let me reintegrate you. And you can wake back up and be part of society again, because it can be very difficult if you've been on a long journey like that to be able to come back. Basically, they help you to remember who you were Who am I? I am so-and-so. I have a life. I have a family. I am connected to people in the world. That is what the grounder, the shaman, the healer person does, is they help you to reintegrate, remember who you were in your connections with this world. So when the emperor comes up, a lot about responsibilities. When you're the emperor, you're at everyone's call. Everyone needs you to do something for them because you're so fucking powerful, right? You have a lot of responsibility, a lot of people to take care of. If you're going to be all powerful and be all emperor, then you're going to be connected to everyone and need to serve everyone because it's really not about you, right? I mean, that's the big secret. So when the emperor comes up, it's about responsibilities and maturity and putting others first. And that is what helps you to reintegrate after this great journey where it's been all about you and your visions. You got to bring it back and share it with all sentient beings. Okay, so when we left, we had guide, the guardian, and the ordeal, right? The thing that you had to go through. When we come back, we have another ordeal, temperance. This is called the reoccurrence of the boon, the expression of the world redeeming vision. So having had the vision and gained that insight, you want to bring it back and you want to express it. And how this can be expressed is poetry, art, writing, music, any kind of way. It could be a beautiful piece of pottery that represents your vision in the other world. It could be a new way of teaching. It could be a new way of dancing. It could be a new form of music. It could be a song. It could be anything, right? But the boon that you gained in the afterworld, the insight, you need to re-express through yourself in the material world. And that is represented by the card of temperance. So temperance, when it comes up in a reading, it's about creating things. And sure, it's always about not going to extremes, but everything's about not going to extremes. It's less interesting. Temperance is about creating things in the right combinations. Like when you're cooking, you don't use the same amount of pepper and salt. That's not balance. You use this much salt, this much pepper, you use different ingredients in different combinations. So this is the synthesis of this boon, you recreating it. It's self-expression in a way that is transformative. Of course, when you interpret the boon so that it's more universal and express it, it loses something, right? Because it's been interpreted. And because it loses something, going from the realm of pure experience and spirit through a person into manifestation, it necessitates a repetition of the cycle. You're never going to be able to express it to another person the way it experienced for you. So you have to do it again, and they're going to have to do it again, but they're going to see that you went through it and be excited and be interested in doing it. Okay, which leads us to Hierophant, the master of two worlds, the master of the inner and outer world. This is a person who's been through this shamanic, this underworld experience, has been on their own personal odyssey, where they've had these adventures, they've gone in, they've recreated themselves, they've had this vision, and they brought it back to society. Hierophant. And then you think, this card in a tarot, it looks like a priest guy and everything. Like it would be very orthodox. But what it represents is somebody who is master of the outer world and the inner world, the underworld and the above world, the spiritual world and the material world, because they're not bound by what other people say. It's kind of weird, but because you think about Hierophant represents sort of somebody who represents sort of an orthodoxy, but they're master of both the outer, like they can say, all right, I need to make a lot of money, I'm going to put on a suit and a tie and go to an office and make money. But then that doesn't really control me. That doesn't define me. I'm going to go home and do spiritual things, and I'm going to create art. There's somebody who's not bound by convention. They can use convention, they understand it, but they're also very spiritual and can create their own heterodoxy, what it's called, heterodoxy versus an orthodoxy. So the person is the master of the two worlds. You understand the world and can operate within it, but you're not bound by it. You're not caught by it. You don't have to, you can wear a tie because you know that that's like a social signal, but you don't feel like it really defines you. It doesn't mean anything because it's just an outward appearance. So when Hierophant comes up, it's a person who understands the outer and the inner and can move through and understand culturally, but who has this spiritual insight that sees beyond the orthodox and can see why the rules and everything are in place. They've already seen the mechanics of the universe. And so they understand it from the inside. They have meta knowledge. And it brings us to the final outcome. The sun, freedom to live, the function of the ultimate boon. So once you have gone through this whole cycle, you get it. You're not doing things because of what you were told and what people said, and you've been through the cycle, you've been through the experience, you've established your own set of internal values, you have an own opinion of own experience of how the universe was created and your part in it that you're going to play. And so your freedom to live, you're not bound by the opinions of others and those outer oppressions and all that. And so the sun, when it comes in, it represents this sort of, freedom. These carved, you can see the little people are nude in the sunlight. Everything is completely innocent. Everything is completely visible. Everything is known. There's no hidden secrets anymore. It's all completely uncontrived, right? Nobody's putting on airs or pretending. There's no need to, because everyone knows. So the path of return is similar to the path of leaving. There's the refusal of the call, and in some stories, that's fine. Like the person can stay there. There's the difficult journey back where we have to separate our own bullshit from the truth that we picked up and not be colored. There's the help from without, the guidance, the healing of bringing you back to the world, of reintegrating you into society. The mastery of the inner and outer worlds, and the freedom to live. So that's the journey home. Now, the total cycle, represented by all the major arcana, but the story of the hero's journey is how we design ritual. If you think about ritual as being theater for the gods, ritual represents us reenacting mythology in order to gain the insight of the people in the story, in order to gain some kind of boon for ourselves. And one of the ways that it is done, let me show you from one of our documents. Here we go. Sorry, I had this set up earlier. Some of our order documents for our group. We have a thing called the gate of revealing that represents this cycle of using this information to write ritual very clearly. here we go. Sorry. So this is a ritual that's directly based on, unabashedly, what we just talked about, the hero's journey. So let's say I'm doing ritual and I've created sacred space and I've created all kinds of energy fields and I'm creating these visions and stuff. I'm doing a lot of stuff, but I want to simplify the energy down and kind of go inside of the energy. I want to go deep into the ritual field of energy that I've created. Maybe I've summoned, say, a planet and an element. I want to combine the energies of the planet, the energies of the element, and create a new effect. Well, that would be like an Enochian senior. Well, I could create a gate of revealing or a gate of transformation. I would put down the high priestess as the guide, the hermit as the fierce guardian, and the tower card as the ordeal. Fuse them together, do a opening of the portal gesture, go inside. And so I've taken the information from the hero's journey and created a ritual from it and the tarot cards. So I can use the tarot and the stages of the hero's journey. And this will be, and you'll be able to see this from the document that's on our site, that I can use this as a journey inward. So that this is one example. And then, of course, when I'm finished doing ritual, it's very important at the end of a ritual to unwind things, right? You wound your energy up to a point where you're having this experience where you expressed your will, you've gotten some kind of insight, then you need to unwind it in some way. So then I could do a gate of return, coming forth by day. If I go to the underworld, I would go from the east, where the sun comes up, to the west, where the sun sets, right? The sun's setting, I'm going into the underworld. Coming forth by day, I stand on the western side of the room and walk towards the east, and I put down, let's see, the Emperor as my guide, the moon as the fierce guardian, and the temperance card as the ordeal, just from what we said. And then I come back, and there's some words in here where I've transformed I will translate the boon from the inner world as into a symbol that will transform the whole world, as above, so below, as within, so without. So it's one way to use this information, but you're going to be enacting the hero's journey if you're doing ritual, period, whether you know it or not, because this is the story of leaving normal time, going to special time, gaining insight, and then reintegrating and coming back. So that's our little talk. Thanks for listening. Join our group if you want to receive notifications of when we have these little talks. Oops.